Last lecture was introduction, just giving you an overview of everything that we will cover in this course, the whole BPM lifecycle, and basically this. And this week we are going to be looking specifically at, let's say, the initial phases in understanding a given business process for the purposes of analyzing it and improving it. We are going to see specifically how to take a business process and how to decorticate it, try to understand it, and produce what we call a business process model out of it. Now, business process models, like any other models, are fundamentally wrong. You all know it. All models are wrong. All models make an abstraction. All models leave aside important details. So what is important actually in a model is that it is useful. So before you do a model, it is important that you ask yourself who is going to use that model, how are they going to use it as well. And it turns out that in business process models, there are many different ways of using a business process model. And roughly, you can split them into two categories. You might want to model a business process at what we call the business level. That means that we are going to use the process model to communicate with other people, because yes, there are other people than you in a company or a project. You know, sometimes software developers might tend to think otherwise, but yes, there are people. So you might want to communicate the business process with other people, or you might want to analyze the process. So use it to find problems in the process and to trace down the problems to the root causes, or you might want to use it to quantify the problems, or to test if I change the process in this way, how much will it improve the performance of the process? So, like for example, by how much it will reduce the average amount of time that the business process takes to complete, or how much it will reduce my costs. So that's what I would call business level use of a business process. It turns out that's a lot of the use of a business process. That's about, in practice, studies that have been made with numerous companies have shown that this is probably about 70 to 80% of the use of business process models. But there is also another use of business process models that we will be interested in as well, which is using business process models at the level of implementing an information system that will support the business process. So we want to use the business process, for example, to derive requirements for the information systems that will support the process. Or if we take an existing process and we make a change, we want to know which new requirements we need to impose on the information systems that are going to support this process, right? Or more ambitious than that, we can, if we put enough detail in a business process model and we deploy into a tool called a business process management system, we can actually implement the information system that is going to support the business process based on the process model itself. So I can take a process model, I can detail it to a certain level, and I can define requirements and give it to an application development team, and they will develop the system that will support my requirements. That's option number one. Or I can put in enough requirements in the model so that I can deploy the model detailed, we call it an executable model, into a business process management system, and that is my implementation of the business process. That is the system that will support the process. So there are different levels at which you can use a business process model, and every time we're going to capture a process, we're going to ask ourselves, where are we going to be? So for our purposes, during the first few weeks, we will be here, probably until the middle of the semester. And then in the second half of the semester, we will go into the lower part. And we will see actually how we can take the process model that we defined it here and we can refine it into a process model at this level. And this is really, I want to emphasize that this is not just about the process model having additional details. It's not just like I take the process model above and I add data types, I add condition, I add whatever other stuff, and I get an executable process model. It doesn't work that way, because what you call a task there might be much larger than what you call a task here. So sometimes one task in a business level model becomes 3 tasks in a detailed model, but sometimes strange things can happen, and the opposite can happen actually. So at a detail level, you might want to consolidate multiple tasks together. And you will see as we go along why you might want to do that. So we are going to see a particular notation for business process models. It's a standard notation called BPMN, Business Process Model Notation. That will be this week and next week. That will be looking into the details of this notation. It's a notation that, fortunately enough, is designed both to support the definition of business-oriented models at the high-level models, but also executable models. So we can use the same notation throughout the entire BPM life cycle. In our case, we can use the same notation throughout the entire course. And good luck as well. There is a wide range of tools that support it. There is one free tool that we will be kind of encouraging to use, if you wish. It's called Visage Process Modeler. It's freely downloadable, and it's quite widely used precisely because it's free. You might want to know why do they make it free, though. And if you have done software economics, you might know why.
The other part which is not free.
Because then they have the implementation part, the executable process modeling part, which is not free. That's their product, that's their key product, that's where they make their money, right? And this is actually, for them, just splitting the process modeling and putting it above and giving it for free. It's just a matter of ensuring that a maximum amount of projects out there are using their tool, and that's all potential leads that could use their underlying the engine to implement it. And then there is another tool which is not free, but it's free for academic purposes, and we have access to it. Basically, you can ask for an account to it, and it's called Signavio. Sorry, the URL for the academic edition of Signavio is not this one, it's academic.signavio.com. Right? You just have to replace ... by academic. The ... that's the real one where you pay. So that one is software as a service. It's like Google Docs, right? Your process model is in the cloud. You can share it with other people. You can do teamwork with your process model. Multiple people can be sharing the same process model. You can even put comments on each other's process model. It's kind of great if you are doing teamwork in a way. So you don't have to be worrying about sending stuff via emails. You can actually even share it with us if you want. Well, instead of submitting us a PDF, you can just share the model as you would do it in Google. I'll still ask you to submit a PDF though, just because then you can later on change the process model while I am grading it, so, which is not a good idea, I think. And then there are kind of other tools that are, some of them are given out free for trial reasons, like for example Oracle BPA. One of the, let's say, market leaders among the large companies, medium to large companies, is called ARIS. It's nowadays a product of Software AG. Very sophisticated. This is like, professional grade, where you will not only be doing process models, but you will have a repository where you share the processes and you can categorize them and search through the processes, and it has functions for simulating processes, doing all sorts of reports with the processes, and enforcing modeling guidelines, as I will discuss later, and so on. It's kind of perhaps one of the most sophisticated tools out there, but it's kind of the opposite of free, whatever that is. And then there are other options. You have access to Microsoft software through the DreamSparks system. You can look on the university website for more information. And part of this is Microsoft Visio, and Microsoft Visio you can do BPMN nowadays. It has everything to do with BPMN. And in any case, pen and paper is enough to get started, and then you can think about what process modeling tool I am going to use. Right. This having this been said, for the practice session, if you want to start using a tool, try to either download this one or create an account in academic.signavio.com. Besides, it has a disadvantage: it doesn't work for Mac. Well, you can put it in a virtual machine if you want. Like Signavio works everywhere, it works in the browser. Right, so BPMN is a very simple language. This is all, this is it, right? Very simple. You're going to ask me, how am I, what's my plan to make you fail the exam if this is all? We can manage. Right, this is all. Right? In BPMN, there is pretty much what we said last week that a business process has. A business process, we said, consists of events, activities or tasks, and decisions. Interrelated by these Cinco flows, they are interrelated, that take you from a given initial state or initial event to a certain outcome that is of value to a customer or to an organization. So I just take these 4 elements and I can start composing them, right? This is a very simple process for managing a purchase order. So a purchase order came in. I'm going to represent that by an event. I'm not giving it a name yet. I'll do it in a minute. There's an event. I receive a purchase order. Then there is a task that you do. You check if I can serve the purchase order. I check the availability of the stock for those products in the purchase order. And then there is a decision point where I can either decide that I cannot serve the purchase order, and at this stage I'm going to say I will reject it. Of course, in practice it's not what you will do. You will try to do something more complicated, but I don't want to elaborate on this branch. Let me go into the other branch. I will confirm the order, and then lots of things will happen, including sending the invoice, shipping the goods, and eventually my order is filled. Right. So what's the catch? Why this is not enough?
Multiple stakeholders, multiple users.
Yeah, we don't know who is doing it, right? That's one point. What else?
How long it takes?
Huh?
How long it takes?
We don't know anything about the performance of the process, right? There's nothing about performance metrics in here, right? There's a point there. Yeah, you have a point. Yeah?
What issues
Where's
does
the
it have?
multi-processes?
Sorry?
What issues does it have?
What problems does this process have? Yeah, that's very important when we are analyzing the process. Not necessarily when we are documenting the process as is, but when we will be analyzing, it will be important to know what is the performance of the process, what are the issues with the process, and so on. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know where we multiply process, where we just reject one process until some stuff will be done.
There is some oversimplification and reject the order, and what happens afterwards. What happens?
In case of, let's say, multiple, after confirm order, here we divide the process and then merge it. So we should
Right. This is not the same as this, you mean?
Yeah.
Right. This is like when you get married. Seems like you have to choose one or the other, right? This is more like boyfriends and girlfriends, right? I don't know if that's a good example. Maybe friends, just friends, right? Informal friends. You can have the two. In fact, this is really like friends. You better have the two, right? You should have the two. So this actually here means I have to send an invoice and have to ship the goods. Sending the invoice without shipping the goods is not good. The customer won't like it, and shipping the goods without sending the invoice is not good because you won't like it because you want the money as well. So this means actually I want to do everything here, both of them, and this one, both branches. And this one means I have to choose one branch or the other branch. And it's very subtle, very, very subtle. And this means actually that I have to wait for this to complete and this to complete before continuing.
So how do you differentiate between them?
Right, that's my point. So in BPMN, we are going to have a small marker in the gateway to indicate whether it is like when you get married, it's an X, right? One or the other, XOR. Or is it both, which is like plus, huh? One friend plus another friend. Let's grab the two together, right? Let's not waste anything. Yeah? Let's grab the two. So, by the way, this is also like your exams. The exams at the end, there are 2 exams at the end of this course, and it's an XOR, right? One or the other, right? You can also have a receipt. That's not quite like a plus though, because you probably don't want to do both, the normal exam and the retake, right? Okay, so the XOR means when it is a split, it means I choose one branch, there are multiple outgoing branches, and I will take one or the other, and the plus means I will take both branches. So I take the previous process, and I paint it, by the way, so that it looks nicer, and it looks like this when you do it correctly. I also turn it around so the rejection is below and the acceptance is above. So I receive an order. By the way, I put also a marker here in this event to say that this is a message I will receive, so I put like an envelope, and I say I receive a purchase order, then I check the stock availability, then either the items are available and I confirm the order, or I reject the order. If I reject the order, my outcome is that the PO has been rejected. So I will represent the outcome with an end event. You know, by the way, this is slightly different. This is start event is a little bit lighter than the end event.
Question.
Yes.
Don't we have to differentiate positive and negative outcomes?
No, we do not differentiate in BPMN between positive and negative outcomes. What a change! That's a very good idea. There is in BPMN a marker for an event that is called, that has like a form of an X, and that means like a terminate, and it will be used typically for negative outcomes. Actually, it will always be used for negative outcomes. However, it also has the semantics of like stopping everything abruptly. So it's a bit too strong, right? It's for a very, very negative outcome where you want to raise an alarm and say, "Wow, it's all wrong," you know. So because of that connotation that it has, the semantics it has, I wouldn't recommend using it. And there's simply like an implicit differentiation between the fact that this event denotes a negative outcome and this event denotes a positive outcome. Right. Otherwise, you confirm the order, and after you confirm the order, this is what we call an AND split. You do this branch and the other branch, you send the invoice and you ship the products. This is not an AND split. It's an AND join, it's the opposite. Okay, you will know that something is a split or a join because a split has multiple outgoing arcs, and you will know that it's a join because it has multiple incoming arcs. When an AND gateway like this one has multiple incoming arcs, it means I have to wait for this to be done and for this to be done, and then I will say that the purchase order has been fulfilled once both have been done, right? Remember that one? Both. Not one, not the other, both. And there is also, I do not show it, an XOR. Some people, there are different styles of modeling. You can use BPMN in different ways. Some people will tell you that every XOR split has to be has a corresponding XOR join. That basically I have to join this branch and this branch into an XOR join. I'm not of that school. I do not promote that school because I like this idea that you have an explicit representation of different outcomes of the process. So that PO reject and PO fulfill are not like, I don't want to have a single end event in this process. I like the fact that I have two different end events because there are different outcomes in my process. It's very different to get to this event than to get to this final event, right? But we'll see that sometimes in the middle of a process you might want to have an XOR join. Right, yes?
One more part. When going to this checked order, there's one /. What does this mean?
All right. So we're going to take this rule that the condition, when you have an XOR split, there is a condition that tells you whether you go left and right. And for the time being, because this is a communication-oriented model, we're going to write it in English, right? So be creative and find a nice way of writing. When do you go this way? And when do you go that way? So here I say, I confirm the order when the items are available, right? So I just write available, and it's understood that this means when the items are available. And then this little thing called a default flow, this marker, this cross here, it means that else, like the opposite of available, which means not available. So if available, confirm the order. If not available, then reject the order. Right? So it's like an otherwise or an else, right? Phenomenal. You see this, right? So here's the first mistake you will do. What's wrong here?
There is no, you can cross the
description.
Yeah. So first of all, that's the first mistake.
And the process.
Those are not tasks. Available and not available.
This is not a task. Like check a stock availability. Right. Available. Is that an activity? I'm available.
Depends.
Maybe that's an activity for any bro who wants to come and see me, right? But not for me, right? You are not available. It's not an activity. I will available myself this afternoon.
I will avail myself.
I will avail myself to your wishes, maybe, but not I will available myself, right? So this is, first of all, this is not a task, you pointed out. Second, somebody pointed out, now you forgot to put here the condition that decides whether you go left or right. And for every XOR split, you are going to have that, right? So beware not to confuse conditions with activities or tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you will know that something is a task because it has to start with a verb. It's something you can do, right? And you will know it is a condition because whatever, it's not a task, but it's next to an XOR gateway. It just means it's something that evaluates to true or false, right? It's true or it's false. It's the items are available or they are not available.
Can there be switch, like multiple conditions?
Yeah, you can have multiple 3, 4, 5 outgoing arcs out of an XOR split. An XOR split can lead to another XOR split. The rules are completely open there. An XOR split can lead to an AND split. Anything is allowed.
Can be this condition done in parallel, like?
This means it's either this way or that way.
No, I mean, if you have several conditions,
Yeah.
conditions,
Right.
and then they will be split, yes, but can we say it is also done in parallel, so we can make like a remark that after these two conditions will be done in the same way, only in the end it will be merged and done.
Oh. Well, I will need to have an example to understand what do you want to do.
I mean, like when we send an order and we check the stock and then we create purchase order.
We send an order. Then we create the stock, you say?
Create view, let's say.
Create view.
Yeah.
And then notify.
So create order and create stock. I mean
Create.
view, not view.
Create stock.
Okay. I mean when we create a bill for the customer,
We create a bill.
right? Create a bill and send notification. It can be done at the same time, right?
I can have a task called create bill and send notification, or I can just do it
I mean, these
like
two
create bill.
these two conditions, they can be done in parallel.
No, there are no conditions. Creating a bill is not a condition. It's an activity.
It's a good, I mean, okay, but they can be done in two.
Yeah,
the same
send
time.
the invoice and ship product can be done in parallel.
In parallel, yeah. So this
That's
is
what it means there. An AND split here means that these two activities can be done in any order or in parallel. They can overlap, whatever you want. You can send the invoice and ship the product, send the invoice. You can send the invoice with one hand and ship the products with the other hand. That's allowed, right? Send the invoice with one foot and send the products with the hands. Everything is allowed there, right? Okay, your turn. This process is very simple. You can do it with the eyes closed like that against the wall. But when it gets more complicated, a good method to model a process is to first identify the activities and try to plot them more or less in the order they occur, but not quite, right? And then you start ordering them. And proved, one of the most effective methods to do that is sticky notes. Very low-tech stuff. And teamwork. And the wall. And we have all of them here. Don't worry. I'll give you. So I'll give each of you a bunch of sticky notes and a piece of wall. And you can get in 3 or 4 and pick your wall. Window is fine as well, right? Window is fine. That will make the process more transparent, right? Someone had the idea of even writing gateways in this system. That was you. Try to concentrate first on the tasks. First, the tasks. Then you care about the control flow. And you will see that you will finish quicker if you do it that way.
No, but you need to learn.
You go in groups of 3, you go against the wall, and you follow this process. And
Okay, check very.
Insurance policy. Check insurance policy.
Check insurance.
there's like a wall, one wall there, one wall there, one wall there, there. Against the blackboard is fine. I'm fine with you. Here there is more. Okay, so I'm going to take this opportunity to give you a quick demo of Signavio as a process modeling tool. So to get to Signavio, you first have to go to this I'll log out to show the stuff, okay? So first of all, you should go here, academic.signavio.com, and you can register and you can ask for an account. You just have to say you are from University of Tartu and use your ut.ee account, and they will create a password, a username and password for you. You have workspaces. You have a notion of workspaces, and a workspace is useful because you can share it with other people. By default, you have an initial workspace, like in Google, where you have a bunch of models, right, that you share with certain people. You can create a new type of model. It supports quite a few models. I'll take a new business process model, BPMN 2.0. And I'll start copying you. So, claim received. This is a start event. So I have a start event, claim received. Then I have a task. Check policy, insurance policy, right? Everybody has that? You check the insurance policy, and then it can be valid or invalid. So I have, and depending on whether it's valid or invalid, I do different things. So if it's valid, I'll start with if it's invalid. If it's invalid, I'll write it here. Okay, I'll inform the customer, right? I mean, some people will say send notification, etc. I think that informing is nicer, and the reason why I like inform the customer as well, because it's very neutral. This can actually be more complicated than just sending an email, right? This can be a whole interaction with me and the customer, because the customer might want to have explanations. The customer might want to appeal the decision. You know, we have to communicate in the procedure for appealing, etc., right? So I'm going to name it inform customer, and there might be a lot of things behind, right? If everything goes fine and the customer kind of agrees or doesn't agree, but we agree to disagree, then the claim will be rejected. I saw some issues somewhere here. Yeah. Well, no, I think there were no issues. Okay, claim rejected. Please note, how am I naming the start and end events versus how I name the activities? Start and end events, always verb followed by participle. sorry, noun followed by participle. This object is in this state. The claim is in the state where I have received and done nothing with it. The claim is in the state where it has been rejected. Whereas activities are named after verb followed by noun. So the policy might be invalid or it might be valid. Well, of course, here instead of writing invalid, I could have used a default flow, which is being a default flow is an attribute of the flow, so I'll probably find it here. Condition type default flow. If the policy is valid, what do? Assess severity, right? And here some of you were tempted to say, oh, if it's severe, then send the complex form. If it's not severe, then send the simple form. And talking about simple, and then of course you will do something like this, and then of course you will do something like this. Oh, it doesn't want to. You can do this, and then you keep going. Or you can say, like, look, in every task in this world, there are different ways of doing it, right? When I grade your exam, if you have a good exam, I don't grade it in the same way as if it's a bad exam, right? If it's a good exam, I say, wow, wow. If it's a bad exam, I say, right? But I'm not going to start writing like, oh, mark a good exam, mark a bad exam, right? So, sending an invoice. I mean, I can have a task, send invoice, and it's different from domestic customers, national customers, and international customers. It's a different type of invoice, etc., right? But I do not need to distinguish it. So the statement was made in such a way as to kind of confuse you a little bit there and make you do two different tasks. It turns out it's kind of the same task. Ultimately, just two different versions of the task. So I'll put this flat and I'll say, what about we just send the form in question. And if you want to insist like, oh, it would be nice to have some annotation to tell me that there are simple forms and complex forms, you can go to BPMN descriptive elements, look for something called artifacts and make a text annotation. And say simple or complex form depending on severity, right? And then I can attach to. Yeah, actually, I already had done it. Okay, I just attach an annotation to the form. That's fine, and we can keep going. After sending the form, what happens?
Anyway.
I need to wait for the response, right? It's a bit like an event, a little bit like receiving the claim, but it's the form that I'm going to receive. But it's not a start event, and it's not an end event, so I will not find any of them in my core elements. But if I go to the descriptive elements, probably have to go to more. I have to go to intermediate events. So it is like receiving a message in the middle of the process. So I'll put one of these. This is like an event that occurs in the middle. It has these two concentric circles and it's a message event. And I'll say form received. And then I can, after the form is received, what do I do?
Validate the form.
Yeah, check the form, yeah. Verb noun. And what can happen?
For complete or not.
It's good or bad, right?
Bad.
Let me say that it's bad. And let me say that it's good. Good is easier. It's good. What do? I register the claim. Register the claim in the system, and I mark it as like done. And this is a positive outcome. I'll say claim register. And this will continue into another part of my process that I will do separately maybe, where the claim will be properly assessed, evaluated, and we will try to find a settlement with the customer. But it might very well happen here, second option. That is not good. That I need to ask customer to update form.
Actually, we put ask for form update.
Ask customer to update form. Yeah, that's okay. And then what will happen?
The form will be received again.
The form will be received again. How do I say a form is received again? I think most of you got it, right? I just say it. Don't be afraid of the arrows back, right? Don't be afraid of the arrows back. It's perfectly okay. It's called a cycle, a loop. It's fine. So long as there is one exit point in the loop, it's a minimum, it should be okay. Some people kind of drew from here straight into sending the form. I try to make a separation here between sending the form initially, which requires no particular explanations, versus asking the customer to update the form, which requires me to give an explanation to the customer of what is missing, what additional documents, right, are needed. Okay, so let me summarize some guidelines of naming things. So every event, as you saw, I will give it. I will give a name to every event, and I will give a name to every task. For task, I use verb followed by noun, possibly with a complement. For message events, I use noun. What is the object that is being affected, and what is its state, which is a participle, like invoice has been received, the claim has been received, the claim has been rejected, the claim has been settled, the claim has been registered, right? I try always to avoid things like handle, record. I actually try to avoid sending as well, as much as possible, right? I would prefer things like notify, inform, something that tells me at a higher level why am I sending, because sending is a mechanism for something else, right? So when you are sending something, it's because you have a purpose, and we try to name the task after the purpose rather than after the the medium that is being used. And label each XOR split with a condition. By the way, I think I made an omission here, somewhere here.
The last one.
In the last one, yeah, this one. I'll say complete. And this one I can, as I said, use a default flow to do it. Okay, I can say my favorite thing. Signavio would find errors and will give you warnings, and you can see where the warnings are. For example, here say, this is some advanced stuff. Okay, no, doesn't matter. I'll just save.
Again about the properties.
Yeah, it's too much.
Which one is default? Which is not? Or should
Which one is default? How to put something as a default flow? I just ask for the attributes, and then in the condition type I use default flow. Standard means nothing. Conditional flow, I do not recommend to use it, and default flow means else, otherwise.
why does default
A default is like this one. It doesn't have any markers. It's a flow, normal, like this one, like this one, like this one, like this one. This one is a little bit different. It has this little cross here, which is a marker, and it's called a default flow. Yeah, it's slightly different from all the other flows you saw here, and it has the semantics. It has to come out of an XOR split, and it means like a flow labeled with the keyword otherwise or something like that, you know, else. Okay, then things get a little bit more complicated as well. Which model do you prefer? This is, I'm giving you a hint, these two are the same model.
The one from the top.
Do you like the one at the top?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You like the one at the bottom. There you are, matter of taste. Okay. How many people like the one at the top? 4 people. So everybody else likes the one at the bottom. So the bottom won, right?
they seem the same?
They are the same.
But the one on the top is more specific on about the loops.
I don't know. The difference is really this one. In here, the loop is delimited. It enters here. There is only one entry point into the loop. You enter here. You do your loop as much as you want, and you exit here. One entry, one exit. There's one point where you go in, and there's one point where you go out. If you do anything called programming, has everybody of you done programming? Yeah. If you had ever done some programming, you have seen that you are encouraged by the programming language to have loops with one single entry and one single exit. Yeah. Why loops? You enter, you exit. Repeat loops, enter, exit. Right. Sometimes you can't escape having 2 exits. There's no break. Sometimes, but 2 entries. Pretty much no programming language allows you that nowadays, because it's not very nice. It's not very understandable, except by the 3 folks here who have their own taste, right? In general, people will perceive that something is more understandable if the loop is delimited in such a way there is one entry, one exit, even if that means that sometimes you have to duplicate stuff, like these two things I had to duplicate them here, right? Whereas above they are not duplicated. Here the problem is that I don't know where it starts or when it ends because there are two entries into the loop, this one and this one. Plus one exit, of course.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why is there an XOR symbol at the first loop? No, on the lower one. No, in the lower diagram. Yeah, that one. Why is there an XOR symbol over there? Because there's only one exit.
Yeah, right. That's an entry, sorry. That's an entry. You can come here, boom, you enter.
Yeah.
And the other one is like the
So
return.
you use the same XOR symbol even if there are multiple entries?
An XOR must have either multiple entries or multiple exits. Yeah, it's like either a join or a split. This one is an XOR join. This is an XOR join. By the way, I don't need it. You are right. I thought you were going to tell me that I don't need it. Yeah, you are right. I don't need it. As a matter of fact, we just saw a case where I didn't use it. I'm going to do it in. Going to repeat it slowly. Slow motion. You see here, turns out it's an event, but this could have been an activity. And I have two input flows, this one and this one. Normally I always model one input, an activity or an event has one input and one output at most, but this one has two. When an event, when a task or an event have two input flows, it's the same thing as if I had put an XOR split here, an XOR join here. So I'm going to get to my, I'm going to try to find my XOR join. It's the same thing as if I put this one here. This, right? But it was nicer the way I did it before. So one task with multiple incoming flows, it's perfectly possible, and it's the same as if that task was preceded by an XOR join. So here, this XOR join, you are right, I didn't need it. Right.
I mean, you could point straight to the generate the significant parts.
Yeah, I could point out straight to generate significant path, and this one too, straight to generate significant path, and it's the same thing as if this task was preceded by an XOR gateway. Yeah. On the other hand, a task with multiple outgoing arcs, flows, I do not recommend it. In addition, it has the semantics of an AND split, which is kind of confusing. And when you have an AND split, I recommend you to explicitly put the gateway. But a task with multiple incoming flows, fine, and that has the same semantics as an XOR join. So one more guideline, when you're modeling, try to make sure that every AND split has a corresponding AND join. They are nicely paired, right? And that every XOR split has a corresponding XOR join, nicely paired. And this is ultimately what distinguishes these two models, right? Here, this AND split clearly matches this one. This AND split clearly matches this one, right? This XOR split here kind of matches this XOR join there. Here, this AND split, well, not clear. It matches this join, but this join also matches this split. So it's a bit like, it's not block structure, we call it, and that actually is what makes models very confusing. So always, AND split and join. You're going to put an AND split, think of where you're going to put an AND join. Also, if possible, XOR split, XOR join, right? But the AND split and join is particularly important. Right, that's what I wanted to say for process modeling as far as a control flow is concerned, but we haven't seen it everything. I'm going to put it this way. A process model consists of what we call four perspectives, or four things. You have to say in a process model what needs to be done or what can happen. Those are the tasks and the events, right? You have to also tell us when do these things happen. Those things are the flows, the arrows, and the gateways. Those tell us when do things happen. What we have seen is the what, task, event, flows, gateways. But someone already pointed out there's more to that in a process. I also want to know who does what. That's kind of important. We are going to call that the organizational perspective. And in BPMN, we are going to introduce two concepts to capture it, called lanes and pools. And we also have to capture what I would call wish perspective, which is like wish data or wish materials, because processes sometimes involves materials that be it paper documents or even goods or raw materials, etc. So wish data, wish materials a process is using, and those things we are going to represent them in BPMN using something called data objects and data stores. So let me kind of go quickly through it, and you'll be doing some exercises on this with Fabrizio during the practice session later today. To capture who does what, BPMN offers you two concepts. BPMN is a very simple language at the end of the day, if you treat it nicely. Just two things you need to know: pools and lanes. Both a pool and a lane represent a role or an organizational unit. Right. The difference is that it's like in a pool, right? Imagine you are in this aula keskus, right? There are pools. There's two pools. There's a pool for the adults and there's the pool for the kids. I guess that you don't know the pool for the kids, maybe, right? And you usually don't want to go from one to the other, especially not from the one from the adults to the kids. No, from the one from the kids to the adults. You don't want to go that way because the one for the adults is cold, right? So to go from one pool to the other, I have to go out, wet, then run to the other pool, right, and throw myself in. To go from one lane to the other, that's very straightforward. But even though the people there don't like it when you do it, but it's fairly straightforward. So it's pretty much the same metaphor. So I'm going to use a pool to denote an organizational unit that has well-defined boundaries, such that it only communicates with the other organizational units via messages, right? So for example, in my insurance example, I could have one pool for the insurance company, one pool for the customer. They will only communicate through messages. They don't sleep together. They are separate units. And I'm going to use lanes within a pool to say that this organizational unit is composed of different subunits that communicate with one another implicitly, right? Because, for example, they share the same information system below. So I can take my order management example, exactly the same model as before. I haven't changed anything, please be reassured. And I can start splitting it into pools and lanes. I'm going to say that there is one pool for the customer clearly, because it's like a separate unit, and one pool for the company itself, which I'm going to call the supplier. Look, every pool has a name. Pools are separated, very clearly delimited. And pools communicate through message flows, meaning that you can indicate for every event or activity where a message is being exchanged, you can say which message is being received or which message is being sent. For example, here I can say that when I confirm the order, I send a message of type PO confirm. Or when I reject the order, I send a message of type PO reject. And inside the supplier, I distinguish the part of the process that is performed by sales and distribution, which is one department in the organization, with the part of the process that is performed by the warehouse. In this case, only ship products is performed by the warehouse. Everything else is performed by sales. So I will basically split my pool with a horizontal line, and that will make it two separate lanes. In Signavio or in a process model tool, typically we'll throw in lanes into a pool. And then I can arrange my tasks so that the tasks that are performed by one lane are in the corresponding lane, and so We will not go through all the exercises. You will be doing these exercises with Fabrizio later during the practice session. That's how you capture the organizational perspective of BPMN. Now coming to the what we call data perspective, BPMN offers you two main concepts. Data object is like a well-defined unit of data, like a document or a form or an object in an object-oriented sense that you can take as input to an activity or you can produce as output from an activity. And we will be using these little arrows, different from the arrows we saw from the flows. The flows are solid arrows, these ones are dotted arrows. We will be using arrows to connect data objects to tasks or to events or vice versa. And the second concept is the concept of data store, which you can see as a database where you can store data that will be persistent past the lifetime of the process instance. So I can take this order management process and I can start adding, in this case, the object purchase order to it and indicating which purchase orders, which parts of the process read the purchase order and which parts of the process write into the purchase order. Right. And this is an exercise. If we have time, we'll come back to it. So let me do a recap before going to the last topic. In BPMN, we have what we call flow elements that allow us to capture the what and the when perspective, activities, gateways, and events. These three types of events get connected by this type of connector called a sequence flow. Then, to capture the organizational perspective, I have pools and lanes. Pools denote separate organizations or organizational units that only communicate through messages, and lanes are subdivisions of a pool that capture different departments or different roles within a given unit. And then I have artifacts, data stores, and data objects that I can connect to activities or to events by means of associations. And one rule is that never ever do you have a flow going from one pool to another pool. Pools, from one pool to another pool, you can only have message flows, which are dashed lines like this one. And one aspect that perhaps I didn't emphasize, I'll come back to it, is that usually there is one pool in the process that you care about, meaning that you focus on in a given model. That one you will model it as a black box, you put in the contents. The other pools are usually treated as black boxes, which means I don't say what the customer is going to do, nor I care. All I care is that the customer will send me this message and will receive this message. So I put my message flows, I make them go into or come from the boundaries of the customer pool in this case. And there are different flavors of gateways. There are AND gateways, AND splits, AND joins, XOR splits, and XOR joins. And an activity that has multiple incoming flows is the same thing as if you have put an XOR join before. And an activity that has multiple outgoing flows, I don't recommend to use this notation, but it is possible, and it's the same thing as this activity was followed by an AND split. Right. And there's a slight distinction between start events and end events because end events are bolded, but that's not very important. Great. I like these models with loops. So have a look at this model and tell me if you see anything wrong. There's something wrong at the bottom here. Ooh. What's wrong?
The flow can't go on because the AND join expects both of the activities.
This process will get stuck during the second iteration. You will go in here, do this task and this task, meaning identify variability and specify integrated subsystem. Eventually they will finish. The AND join will be satisfied. It will fire its outgoing flow, which means that I will do generate significant path. Sorry, this is generate. And generate the optimal path combination, and then either is all more subsystems need to be tested. In this case, I will come back or I finish. If I do come back, then I will do this, specify integrated subsystem, and then I will be here. And this gateway is a bit dumb. It will be an AND split is waiting for input from both of its incoming flows before firing. So here, this AND gateway will be just waiting forever and ever for what we call a token to come from identified variability. Not good, right? We'll get stuck. We will not move into this task or this task because this guy is waiting. Right. So what we need here is a bus driver. Right. The bus driver, kind of, when he's at a stop, a good bus driver, will look into the mirror to see if anybody is coming. And if someone is running like, coming from Kaupamaya with two bags and two kids like that, they will wait for that person to arrive, right? A good bus driver, right? No, they don't wait for it, right? I mean, let's idealize the bus driver, right? And then the person comes in and they will look back, is anybody coming? And then there comes another one, right? This time, a family with 3 kids and so on. So the bus driver will wait for them, and the bus driver will keep waiting so long as it has to wait. And when it looks back and nobody's coming, they leave, right? So that's what we need. We need to put a bus driver here who will wait for this and this if it has to wait, or it will just wait for this one if that's all they have to wait for, right? So the bus driver in BPMN is called an OR gateway. It can be a split or it can be a join. When it is a split, it means you can take either one path or 2 paths or 3 paths or all of them. It doesn't matter, depending on the conditions. So it's not an XOR, it's not an AND. In an AND, it means you do both. In an XOR, it means you do one or the other. In an OR gateway, it means you will do one or the other or both, depending on the conditions. And when it is a merge or a join, then it's a bus driver. It waits for whatever it has to wait. Let me give you an example. So here I receive an order, and let me assume that my my company is divided into 2 warehouses. And in an order, there are purchase items, there are line items, right? In a purchase order, there are line items, and some line items might be stocked in warehouse A, some line items might be stocked in warehouse B. If my purchase order contains items from this warehouse, then I will consult this warehouse. If this item contains, if the purchase order also contains items from this warehouse, I will consult warehouse B. It might be that I have to consult both of them. It might be that all the products I'm looking for are in one warehouse, right? It depends. So I might execute this activity only, or this activity only, or both of them. So I will put an OR split. And then I will pair that OR split with an OR join to say that I will wait either for this, or for both if I did both of them before continuing. So if I go to my previous example, I can take this AND gateway here and replace it with an OR, and now it's fine. The OR, the first time will wait for both of them, the second time it will only wait for this one.
Or you could lose some performance and get rid of parallelity.
Yes, no, actually, if you wanted to do it in a different way, the trick is that you have to duplicate. What you do is that the first time, when you are here, the first time you just repeat this activity, duplicate it here, and do specify integrated subsystems, and then if there are more components that you loop there, you follow me? Like this thing here, at the end of this process, as it is, if it's more, well, if it's okay, then I finish. If it's more, then I duplicate that activity, specify integrated subsystems, and then I have an XOR split. If I am done, then I go here. If I need more, then I go back to this activity. And that should do the job.
Couldn't you put it beyond AND split? So
then
we
that
want-
will mean that that when there are more subsystems, you repeat this
Yeah.
activity.
Yes.
But I want to say that no, you only do that activity once.
Okay.
Right. If I want to say that, I can't. Yes.
Can it happen that when the split has to wait too long, then kind of fault occurs? That maybe it is not waiting long enough, or
Then an OR split, an OR join, you
Yeah.
mean? An OR join would just wait what it has to wait.
that's not defined very well.
No, that's defined extremely well. What means is that if you do the transitive closure backwards without traversing the same OR split again, so you define the backwards transitive closure without traversing again the OR split, then the unsplit will fire if it has a token in one of its incoming flows and there is no token in that transitive closure. If there is a token in one of those in the transitive closure, then it just waits for that one. So it's just a check on the transitive closure, which can be very easily optimized if you memorize the computation of the transitive closure. Right. We have time to do that one, so why don't we just scribble it in a piece of paper?
So we have it here. For the OR claim or gateways, we need to define the arcs, give some.
Yeah, like in an XOR gateway, like in an XOR split. Like in an OR split, like in an XOR split, you have to give conditions to the outgoing arcs. Funnily enough, one of them has to be a default flow. The reason is because in BPM, because if you didn't have one of them being a default flow, it might be that you have
Don't
nothing to
fulfill
do.
either of them.
Neither of them is taken, and then in essence, if you did that, your process is stuck at that point in time. So to avoid this semantic aberration, you in BPMN you prefer to split. They force you that one of the flows coming out of an OR split should be a default flow. By the way, it's good practice to also do it with XOR splits. One of the flows should be a default flow. The others can have conditions. One of them should be default. Okay. What comes next here? This is a small test. Yes. Not the gateway yet. You want to put the gateway? No, not yet. It turns out that classifying the claim is an activity. Somebody has to look at it and figure out what it is. Two possible outcomes. Now, it's simple or complex. If it's simple, you check the policy. If it's complex, you check both the policy and the damage. And damage. Sometimes you do one, sometimes you do two.
So they have no.
Yeah, so I will use an OR split, right? I will not use an OR join, although I could, right? But I will use an OR split. And let me grab simple. If it's simple, what do I do? I'm just testing. I'm just trying. If it's simple,
Check policy.
check policy, right?
But shouldn't the OR be after the check policy, since both of them check policy?
Depending.
And
Yeah, but then you will sequentialize. You want to do me this, right? Check policy. And then you will check the damage, right?
yeah,
Only if it's complex and if it's simple, you would like to skip this one, right?
yes.
Right. This you sequentialize. This is one. This is always done first, and that's always done second. I would like that they are done. If the policy is complex, you can do them in any order. Okay, you can tell me what I'm trying to ask you is nonsensical. Fine, but I'm asking you anyway.
Okay.
Right. So I don't want to sequentialize the process. Right? It's really in parallel.
Mhm.
So here I want to write check damage. And I want to say that if it's complex, I want to do the two in parallel.
You need to split it.
I need to split. You mean I need to throw this out here? Right. I promise, what do I put here? Complex. No.
No.
No, because here I have a problem. Yeah, I'll start. This is a good first shot.
And the other one should be stable.
And this one is true. Or
Finished.
actually, no, default means if the others are not true. So no, actually, this is always or true. Now I'm fine. Whatever happens, I check the policy. If it's complex, I check the damage.
Meaning it's default and always. Both of them are
No,
on the lower arc.
default,
No.
default is a nasty one because default
Yeah.
means not that.
But you said that we should or we pretty much need to define one of them as default.
Yeah, I will say always, and I will make this a default flow. But in an OR join, in an OR split, the default has semantics like this. If the condition is true, if one of the outgoing flows, at least one of them, is taken, the default is not used. Only if nothing, all the conditions evaluates to false, then the default is taken.
Okay.
It's a very corner case. You are picking me up on a corner of BPMN there. Right? You know what? For OR splits, I will try to define all the conditions. Okay, and make sure that at least one of them will be true. And then here, what do I do?
Oh.
OR join, and then I complete.
But couldn't we say, and wouldn't it be make more sense if the last join would be and? Meaning we need both of them.
No, because if I make it an and the policy is simple, I don't take this branch, only this branch.
Indeed.
Then I end up stuck.
Yeah, indeed.
Right.
My fault.
I end up stuck. Okay. And of course, this is you could have tried to do it with an XOR split and an AND split as well, something like this. But it would have been more complex. I could have said, if it's simple, check policy. And join, XOR join, and if it is complex, in the opposite of simple, then I will have to check the policy again, the same thing as I go, and check damage. That will have worked here as well.
Parallel or switching one scenario.
In Signavio, there is in the analytic subset there must be gateways or split. Gateways, inclusive gateway. Look, yeah, inclusive, and I have even an event-based ones. Make sure you pick the analytic elements in the palette. The basic palette has very little, but then there are descriptive elements has more. Even the descriptive doesn't have yet this one, but the analytics will have pretty much everything. Okay, so Fabrizio will be here in about 20 minutes or so, and for the practice session.